Rome was founded in 753 BC, but what about its origins? What happened before the founding of Rome? Well, the origins of Rome will occur much earlier than 753 BC, over 400 years before the founding of Rome. Today, I'm going to explain to you the origins of Rome. If you want to continue seeing more from me, like and subscribe, and comment down below. My goal is to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would appreciate it if you subscribed. I also have a second channel where I plan to just play games, so make sure to check that out. Now on to the video. There were several Troys before the most famous one, but they were all destroyed by natural causes. All you need to know is that Troy was built on top of itself again and again. The most famous one, Troy Villa, is the most relevant to the story. It was built on top of Troy 6 in 1300 BC. It would be a successful city living in prosperity until the Trojan War. The war would start either because Paris, a prince of Troy, abducted Helen, who was the queen of Sparta, or she left her husband to be with Paris. Both scenarios are in Greek mythology, so I guess it's up to anyone's interpretation. Regardless, the Greeks would raise an enormous army and sail to Troy. They would famously siege the city for 10 years until the Greeks would famously give the Trojans the Trojan horse as a peace offering, not knowing that Greek soldiers were hiding inside the horse. Ultimately, the Trojans would bring the horse into the city, where in the night the Greek soldiers would leave the horse and open the city gates from within, letting in the rest of the Greeks to enter the city and destroy Troy in 1184 BC. But the story does not end, as a hero would rise from the ashes, Aeneas. Aeneas would fight during the Trojan War. On the night of the destruction of Troy, he would wake up and gather his family to flee Troy. He would famously carry his father on his back and lead his son and remaining survivors to safety. However, he would lose his wife during the chaos. Aeneas, his family, and remaining survivors would reach the city of Atandros, where they would gather timber to build ships. After building the ships, Aeneas and the remaining survivors would leave for the Mediterranean. After spending years in the Mediterranean, visiting Greece, Crete, Sicily, and ultimately shipwrecking into Carthage. He would spend some time in Carthage and fall in love with the queen of Carthage, Dido. He would leave Carthage to continue his divine duty in search of a new homeland. But he would be cursed by Dido, who would curse Aeneas and his descendants before taking her own life. He would arrive in Italy, where he would visit Cumae and would go to the underworld. Yeah, there's a lot of oversimplifying, since if I talked about every detail, this video would be a couple hours long. Anyway, he would ultimately arrive in Latium and meet King Latinus. He would promise his daughter Lavinia to Aeneas. A war would ensue as Turnus, the local Rutulian leader, would be enraged as Lavinia was already promised to him. Aeneas would defeat Turnus, securing his people's home, and would find the city of Lavinium, which was named after his wife Lavinia. Aeneas would rule as king from Lavinium to a united Latin and Trojan people. He would live out the rest of his life and would become a god after his death. His son Ascanius would succeed him and would play an important role in Rome's origins. After ruling for 30 years, Ascanius would leave Lavinium to find his own city. He would find Alba Longa, where he would become its first king and find the Silvian dynasty. Alba Longa would become a prosperous center for the Latin League, and the Silvian dynasty would continue for roughly 400 years until conflict would occur. After the death of Procas, Numitor would become the rightful king. However, his brother Amulius, seeking power, would overthrow his brother in a coup. He forced Numitor into exile and killed his sons, as well as forcing Numitor's daughter Rhea Silvia to become a Vestal virgin to prevent any heirs. It seemed like Amulius' power was secured until Rhea Silvia would be impregnated by Mars, the Roman god of war, and would birth twins. They would be Romulus and Remus. Hearing the birth of Romulus and Remus, Amulius was enraged. He ordered the death of Rhea Silvia, but she would be spared and turned into the wife of the river god Tiberius. Romulus and Remus would be spared when a servant who was ordered to drown them would instead put them into a basket and would drift into the Tiber River, which would be calmed by the river god Tiberius. The twins would drift back to land near Palatine Hill, where a she-wolf would nurse them before a shepherd named Faustulus would find them and raise them alongside his wife. The twins would live as shepherds and would become strong leaders in their community, until an incident would occur where the twins would clash against Amulius's men. Remus would be captured and brought before Amulius. Hearing of his brother's capture and Faustulus revealing the twins' origins, Romulus would gather local shepherds to bring back his brother. Remus would be saved, and the brothers would defeat and kill Amulius, restoring their grandfather Numitor back on the throne as the rightful king. After restoring their grandfather back to the throne, the twins would decline the throne in favor of finding their own city. The twins would return to the place where they were raised. However, the twins would soon be in conflict as they could not choose which hill to build their city on. Remus favored Aventine Hill, while Romulus favored Palatine Hill. Remus favored Aventine Hill for its fertile land and ease for expansion, while Romulus favored Palatine Hill for its defensive capabilities and its proximity to where the twins washed up. To settle their dispute, the twins would use augury, which meant that they were looking for signs and prediction of the future, commonly using birds. Remus would see 6 vultures, while Romulus would see 12. This would create even more conflict, as Remus argued he won since he saw his vultures first, while Romulus argued since he saw more, he won. With the dispute unsettled, Romulus would begin constructing the walls at the Palatine Hill. Remus would mock Romulus by jumping across the wall. Romulus, enraged at the disrespect, would murder Remus, leaving Romulus alone. He would build his city on Palatine Hill and find the city of Rome, naming the city after himself and becoming its first king in 753 BC, ending the origins of Rome and marking the beginning of Rome's history.